Hi, everyone. Welcome back from our breakout rooms. Hope you've learned something or been inspired by one of our breakout speakers. My name is Norman Law, and I am Actera's Development Director. If you haven't done so already, please support Actera with a donation. We wouldn't be able to do the work that we do without your support. So you can give through actera.org/donate, or you can scan this QR code and it will take you there. And a few of our staff would like to share what they do at Actera and how you can support their work. Starting off with Patty.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us today for our annual celebration. Several months ago, I took on the role of Equity, Access, and Partnerships as a new position for Actera. The position was created to demonstrate Actera's commitment to ensuring equity and access throughout our programs and to the communities we serve. It also provided an opportunity for me personally, as this is an area that I'm interested in. In the past few months, we've been able to create new partnerships with local schools and nonprofit organizations to expand our reach into new communities and create opportunities for students to learn through our leadership and mentoring. We've also applied for grants with a DEI lens as part of our programming and our work. And we're providing a space for staff to share knowledge and insights as it relates to diversity, equity, access, inclusion, and belonging. Overall, we're building a best practice to ensure that we are representing our broader community. We know we have a lot of work to do, and I'm confident that our staff is all in this commitment and willingness to be part of this organization that prioritizes equity, access, and opportunity for all. So today, I'm asking for your support to help us continue on this journey, to ensure we incorporate equity in everything we do. With your support of $50, we'll be able to continue building partnerships, expand our reach to new and diverse communities, and enhance our translation services. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Nicole Angel, Food Systems Director at Actera. Thank you for joining us tonight and for supporting Actera's climate action, education, and advocacy. Actera leads a coalition called Homegrown Bay Area, which brings together local government, nonprofits, and community members that all want to create a more equitable and sustainable regional food system. Our vision is for everyone in our local community to enjoy healthy, plant-forward, culturally appropriate, locally and sustainably grown food, produced with fair wages, good working conditions, and no food going to waste. We research and evaluate solutions from cities here and around the globe, examples of innovative and impactful policy and programming that Bay Area cities, towns, and counties can use and adapt to meet the needs of their community. We mobilize teams to spur action. Together, we are realizing systemic change. Your gift of $100 could help fund the Homegrown Bay Area team so we can recruit, train, and support a team of community advocates to work with the local government in your city or town. Thank you again. I'm so grateful for your generous support that makes our work possible.
Hi everyone, my name is Jared Johnson, though most folks just call me JJ. I'm Actera's Senior Manager of Policy and External Relations, and for my entire adult life I've been waiting for opportunity like the one I have today. Over the past 3 years, Actera is giving me and our growing policy team a great vehicle to accelerate change. We have led campaigns both locally and statewide to advance policies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And instead of siloing ourselves into one issue area, we've tried to work on transportation, building, and food-related sources of emissions while keeping an equity-focused mindset. And for us, an equity-focused mindset acknowledges that different groups of people have different varying needs of support due to their life circumstances and the social structures they're placed in. For transportation, that has led us to push for policies that make it easier for those living in multifamily buildings to charge an electric vehicle. We have successfully helped cities across the Bay Area introduce new building codes to guarantee 100% access to charging in multifamily buildings, and I've pushed the state to increase its charging standards from around 10% to about 40% of multifamily residents in new buildings being given adequate access to charging. And in the realm of building the conversation, We would focus our work locally to help assist many municipalities to pass REACH codes for all electric building construction in both new and existing buildings, while in Milpitas in particular, helping to push back against attempts from industry to expand gas infrastructure. Lastly, Octera has been a strong advocate for plant-forward eating and climate-smart agriculture. Following our model of bringing people together to create change, we established a new collaborative called Homegrown Bay Area to help reform our regional food system. Changing the way we grow our food, limiting our consumption of carbon-intensive foods, and reducing our food waste in general can help us significantly curb emissions. We also understand that climate change will have a greater impact on young people, and we've been working specifically on increasing education about climate change in schools, as well as giving students the opportunity to help pass policies to reduce emissions through our ASAP public comment program. Our policy work is so important because individual actions can only take us so far. Climate change is a systemic problem and will need a systemic solution. And to us, passing new climate policies is the fastest way to get to that systemic solution. So a gift from you of $250 can help us keep pressure on lawmakers to implement strong greenhouse gas reducing ordinances. So thank you so much for your support.
Hey everyone, Robbie Brown here, Actera's Food Sustainability Manager. We've been working really hard since the inception of our food programming to promote low carbon diets, healthy eating, and preventing wasted food. We've done this over the last several years by providing experiences and opportunities for residents, as well as finding ways to collaborate with local food businesses. Our goals are to educate and inspire others to take climate action in the sense of sustainable eating, while simultaneously exploring culture through food. A generous donation of $500 would help support our work in trying to boost our local food economy and lower our individual carbon footprints in two ways that have high impact: plant-forward diets and minimizing our food waste.
Hello, my name is Leo Steinmetz, Beneficial Electrification Manager at Actera. I work on our outreach programs for home electrification, promoting efficient technologies like heat pump water heaters and induction stoves, which can help households lower utility bills, make their homes safer, and prevent thousands of pounds of carbon dioxide emissions per year. You might have noticed that the negative health impacts of gas stoves have been in the news recently. But many people are worried about the prospect of changing to another way of cooking. Well, we have a program that lends out plug-in countertop to induction cooktops to anyone who wants to try them out and see if switching to induction cooking would work for them. Our surveys show that when people get this experience cooking on induction, they tend to become excited and enthusiastic about the technology. So we always want to buy more cooktops and expand our lending programs, and a donation of $1,000 can help us do just that, allowing us to introduce this transformative technology to more Bay Area residents. Thank you so much for supporting Actera.
Hi, I'm Lily, and I'm the Youth Climate Education Associate at Actera. My job is to create climate change education programming for young people. That means that I figure out how to take complicated information and make it easy to understand for students. Our goal is to help young people understand all the noise they hear about climate change and prepare them to have meaningful discussions and create change, both in their personal lives and in their communities. I've been working hard at improving and scaling the Youth Be the Change program and the Actera Student Ambassador program. Our Youth Be the Change program introduces climate change science, impacts, and solutions to middle school classrooms, lifting the heavy load of lesson planning and curriculum building off of our already strained educators. Since bringing the program into classrooms, we've motivated students to start their own projects like lawn conversions and student-organized solutions debates. They've also made changes in their own lives and homes, like adopting plant-forward diets and reducing food waste. Additionally, we've been conducting Train the Trainer programs, which have been positively received. This program has a cascading positive impact because we're equipping teachers to be able to take climate change education into their own hands over the lifetime of their teaching careers. Additionally, we're expanding our curricula offerings to include other environmental conservation-focused topics. Our Actera Student Ambassador program mentors and guides high school and college students to implement their projects and to become active members of advocacy in their communities. We do this by helping them gain access to City Council meetings and by prepping them on how to make effective public comments. Some of the modalities we use to do this include our new public comment workshops and our weekly newsletters and action alerts. Most importantly, our youth programming gets the conversation started in a safe and curiosity-driven environment. Your gift of $2,500 can help fund programs like these and help raise a more informed generation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Irvin Rivero, and I am Actera's Beneficial Electrification Associate. I've been honored to play an increasing role in our CarroNet GoEV program. This program's goal is to empower Bay Area residents to access clean transportation solutions like electric vehicles and e-bikes for their own transportation security, but as well as to reduce California's top source of carbon emissions, transportation, and particularly gas-burning passenger vehicles. We have inspired and supported a lot of residents to go EV over the past 5 years, but our outreach efforts are needed now more than ever in order to bridge the gap between the early EV adopters and residents of low-income neighborhoods who endure the greatest pollution burden and may not be aware of the funding available to help them purchase EVs and e-bikes. Buying an electric vehicle can be a big leap without the adequate knowledge and support, which is exactly what we provide through our educational workshops, EV expos, and dedicated EV ambassadors. Additionally, in order to ensure that the transition to clean vehicles is available to all residents, we offer financial incentive clinics in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese to provide information about the many grants that are available to income qualifying residents. Better yet, we offer attendees free one-on-one consultations and then tailor a personalized action plan to fit each person or family's specific needs. These activities are staff and time intensive, but they're exceedingly fruitful and essential for equity. Here's just one inspiring example. Yaris attended one of our EV financial incentive clinics and then did an individualized consultation with one of our EV coaches. With our assistance, she was able to turn in her old car that had failed its mock check and got a Clean Cars for All grant, which helped make it possible for her to purchase a Tesla Model 3. She thanked us for, quote, "the exceptional and personal attention I received from you. I truly believe you were the reason my application was processed so quickly." With our GoEV program goal of $5,000, we can continue to help residents of all income levels experience the health, financial, and personal benefits of EV ownership and contribute to a more healthy planet in the process. Thank you for supporting our effort to vastly reduce our region's biggest source of climate pollution and ensure EV access for all.
I don't know how many of you know this, but I had no climate experience when I was hired at Actera, but I was really good at asking for money. I'm a trained fundraiser by trade, and I think that's one of the reasons that Actera hired me. So I get the immense pleasure and maybe the burden of asking you all this evening for our highest Fund a Future level. And the reason I get excited about that, one is I love being able to put people's generosity to good use for social impact. And I also get to recap the amazing work that our teams at Actera do so that we can earn and reinvest your generosity into programs that are creating that social impact. You heard tonight from staff that manage education programming, advocacy programming, EV and mobility programming. You learned about how Actera reduces barriers for access for a just transition to fossil fuel-free appliances. You learned about how we leverage research to impact statistics and educate communities on the truth of our climate change environment and what activists are really up against. This is the full scope of what Actera does day in and day out, and we cannot do our work without you. So I humbly ask tonight that you think deeply and reflect deeply on the role that you and your generous gift can make to Actera and its future and to all those that we serve on a daily and yearly and future, who knows, another 53 years of service. Please think deeply about making a $10,000 gift tonight. We could not do our work without you. We cannot do our work without you. None of us would be here without you. And I would love to see you lean into your investment at Actera by making that $10,000 gift tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you to all of our donors. Again, we wouldn't be able to do our climate work without your support. Back to you, Katie.
To close the evening, our final speaker is Dr. Jonathan Foley. John is a leading climate scientist, sustainability expert, educator, and public speaker. He's also executive director of Project Drawdown, the world's leading resource for climate solutions. His work focuses on finding solutions to sustain the climate, ecosystems, and natural resources we all depend on. John's work has led him to become a trusted advisor to governments, foundations, nonprofits, and business leaders around the world. He and his colleagues have made contributions to our understandings of climate change, the global food system, and the sustainability of the world's resources. He has published over 140 scientific articles, including many highly cited works in Nature and Science. He earned his PhD from the Department of Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences at the University of Wisconsin and is among the top 1% most cited scientists in the world. Here is Dr. John Foley.
Hello, my name is John Foley. I'm the Executive Director of Project Drawdown, and I'm so thrilled to be with you today in this virtual presentation. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak at this conference. I'm going to talk today about the state of climate solutions and how we can do a better job of advancing solutions to climate change out into the world and how science can guide us in this process and the role we can all take in this journey. So let me share some slides and let's begin. So today we're going to talk about how we can use science to address the climate crisis and deploy climate solutions at the speed and scale that are necessary to do the job. Science has always been with us, though, because science, after all, warned us first about climate change. In fact, back in the 1850s, a woman named Eunice Foote, F-O-O-T-E, was the first scientist in the world to tell us that increasing levels of greenhouse gases, like carbon dioxide, would end up warming the planet. So believe it or not, she warned us about this whole process back when this chart began in the 1850s. And she was right. As CO2 levels were increasing over time, we saw that the temperature of our planet has warmed in proportion to that. In fact, the temperature of the world has warmed a little bit more than 1 degree Celsius so far, and we're headed towards more warming if we continue to let greenhouse gases build up in the atmosphere. So science has been helpful in telling us about the problem. Now we need to think about the solutions to climate change. And again, here, science can help us as well, because there are so many different competing claims and people with agendas out there are trying to sell you the answer to climate change, maybe to make money off of it or power or whatever, I don't know. But on any given day, there's all these different competing claims telling us what the answer to climate change is, whether it's nuclear or just solar or plastic or whatever. These are just examples I just picked off of Twitter this morning. Well, it turns out we need somebody to help us figure out which solutions actually make sense and which ones maybe don't, or how to put them all together so they get the job done. Again, this is a great job for science. And this is what Project Drawdown has been doing for the last few years, is using scientific evidence and the latest data on science and engineering and economics to look at different climate solutions and see how they might work, whether it's things like rooftop solar or reducing food waste. We've built a library of about 100 different solutions, which have been constantly updated over the last few years, showing us what the most effective solutions to climate change actually are. This library is built of solutions in things like electricity over here, showing different kinds of electricity solutions to climate change, or solutions in the food and agriculture and land use sector, or over here in transportation. Together, this whole system tells us a system of solutions we can use to stop climate change before it gets to be too grave. But the problem here is we're only describing potential solutions. We're not actually telling people how to deploy them or how to bring them to scale. So in a way, it's like maybe a food book, like a coffee table book about delicious foods around the world. But what we need now is not just a description of the food, we need the recipes. We need to know step by step how to deploy those different solutions. Like step 1, heat up the pan. Step 2, chop up the onions, that kind of thing. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is what we're calling the Drawdown Roadmap. Basically, it's how we go about stopping climate change. And it begins with some science. Again, the science here about how we deploy climate solutions in the best possible way. To do that, we have to think about the job ahead. Here, for example, is what we need to do. Greenhouse gas emissions, this red curve, have been accumulating over time and building up into the early 2020s, where we are at that red dot. If we extrapolated the last few decades and just kept on the same course, we'd probably end up following the dash line with even more pollution each and every year into the future. As the world's economies get bigger and more people are joining in capitalism and kind of consumer culture and all this kind of stuff, as well as the Earth's population getting larger, all of that combined would have us maybe increase our emissions over time, which is just the opposite of what we'd rather be doing. What we need to do is, in fact, cut those emissions drastically in the next decade or two, maybe as much as 40 to 50% in the next 10 to 15 years, and then keep cutting them until the 2050s. That's what we need to do to stop climate change and keep the planet down towards the Paris Accords levels of warming. But even if we keep cutting emissions like this into the mid-century, it's not likely we're going to get all the emissions in every single country and every single source of pollution down to zero. I hope we can, but we probably won't. So that's where we might need a little bit of carbon removal. That is a small amount of removal to just take out the last remaining emissions that might still be here by mid-century. The problem, though, is carbon removal is really tiny right now. In fact, it can't even be measured on this graph. It's so small compared to the emissions, which are tens of millions of times larger. So we have a big job ahead to radically increase the size of carbon removal over the next few decades just to remove the last 10% or so of our emissions. But hopefully, between cutting emissions drastically and soon, and slowly growing carbon removal up over the next few decades, we can hit what's called net zero by 2050, where we cut most of the emissions and scoop up the rest and have no net pollution added to the atmosphere by mid-century. If we did that, we could keep the warming of our planet somewhere between 1.5 and 2 degrees of warming, hopefully closer to the 1.5 end of the range. That would be the best possible outcome. But when we do this, there's some things we have to keep in mind. One of which seems to be forgotten a lot by technologists and investors and politicians and activists, is that there's something we might call the time value of carbon. That the accumulation of carbon over time is what causes climate change, the annual buildup over years of additional pollution building up over time. That's what causes climate change. So solutions are also cumulative. Let me show you what I mean. In the 2020s, when we cut emissions on that red curve, this is the amount of pollution we prevented from happening. And that if we hold those 2020 actions, like the things we do in the next few years to the rest of the decade, if we hold those into the 2030s, it prevents this much more pollution, and even more in the 2040s. So interestingly, the work we do now in the 2020 decade can build up and affect the future for 30 years. Making a big dent in what climate change future would look like. But then if we take action in the 2030s, it does a little bit less because it only has 2 decades to work in the atmosphere as compared to 3. And by the 2040s, we only get about 1 decade of work to prevent climate change from getting really bad by 2050. And so it obviously has less time with which to work in the atmosphere. Carbon removal faces the same challenge. It's basically zero today, and it will take decades to build up. And by the time it does, it only has a short amount of time to work in the atmosphere. This is what we call the time value of carbon. That is, climate solutions are cumulative. It's the area under the curve that matters, not the value on the curve. That's why early solutions to climate change are always better than faraway solutions, because they have more years to work on the planet. So this is sometimes why high-tech solutions that are really far away are probably not going to be the most effective compared to solutions we have right now that can be deployed today, bend the curve, and keep on bending it down into the future decades. When we look at the total amount of work that we'd have to do on climate change, we find that cutting emissions is about 94% of what we need to do. And from the first decade, is 75% of what we need to do, which is kind of amazing. Removing carbon will be important too, but that whole effort at most will do about 6% of the total job of stopping climate change. This has huge implications for climate and how we need to guide our efforts. And that's what I want to tell you about now. How can science guide us to figure out how we do different solutions across different sectors? Well, this is basically a portfolio project. That is, how much do we do in stopping climate change from electricity versus food or industry or transportation, buildings, and other sources? Well, this bar graph shows us what we need to do in these different sectors in proportion to each other, using gains in efficiency and decarbonization. At Drawdown, we can also recommend doing social interventions, things that actually don't affect climate directly, but they affect people. And then later, people then affect the climate. So, for example, investing in indigenous communities that protect their forest, or investing in more healthcare and education around the world, changing future economic and demographic outcomes, which also then lowers emissions. And then carbon removal here at the last 6%. So this is a science-based portfolio of what we need to do between now and 2050 to stop climate change. We can double-click this and show in more detail all the different things we need to do and in what amount in order to stop the problem. We can drill in and look at one particular set of solutions, maybe in electricity, showing how much we need to do to shift electricity production away from fossil fuels, but also how we can use energy efficiency to reduce the demand for electricity. Both of these areas are big solutions. We can also look at the relative cost of different climate solutions. This is showing the cost of climate solutions from cheapest, which make money and have profits over the next 30 years, compared to a world still powered by fossil fuels, all the way to some solutions that might need to be subsidized in the future. But even with this kind of economics, every dollar we invest in climate solutions will make back $5 compared to the fossil fuel world and prevent catastrophic climate change with incalculable impacts on the economy and people. So this is the best bargain in human history if we do it right. So when we think about the portfolio of things we need to do, I like to think about Earth's portfolio, the portfolio that science tells us we need to do to act appropriately on climate change. This, what I'm showing you here, is what we call the Earth portfolio. It's the amount of work we need to do in different areas, represented by the amount of carbon that can be prevented in each. But here's where we run into trouble. This is what the science says, but this is what we end up doing. This bar shows the amount of money going into different areas of climate solutions from philanthropy, from foundations and other donors trying to do good work on climate. But obviously, some of that money is misaligned. Not enough is going to some areas, and maybe, relatively speaking, too much in others. It's even worse in the private sector, where we look at venture capital, for example, a huge amount of money going into climate technologies, but a vast overabundance of money in things like electric cars and scooters in the transportation sector. Maybe they're trying to become the next Tesla or something. I don't know. But this is not a portfolio that will address climate change. It's a portfolio designed to make money fast. And that's maybe okay if you only care about venture capital, but please, when you think you're being a climate hero, let's put the monies in the right places in proportion to the science. We also need to think about how we allocate our work over time, because time is the most critical aspect of climate change in the future. As I showed before, we have to cut emissions drastically in the first decade or so, and that requires we take what I call emergency brake measures for climate, things that can immediately affect the atmosphere and bend the curve now. Things like stopping deforestation, stopping the leaks of methane, or the burning of black carbon into the atmosphere, all powerful greenhouse agents. Or things like energy efficiency with existing infrastructure and wasting less energy right now while we build out the new low carbon infrastructures, the new transportation systems, the new buildings, the retrofit of old buildings, the new industries and so on that'll take longer to build out. We need to stamp the brakes right now with the emergency brakes while we build a little bit of time to build new infrastructure. We also need to allow time to unfold for social interventions or nature-based climate solutions that may take years for soils and trees, maybe even decades, to build up and absorb carbon. And of course, the payoff of new technologies. We're going to need all 5 of these kinds of solutions, but let's make sure we put enough in the right baskets. Let's make sure we have enough emergency brakes to slow climate change now while we buy time to let other solutions kick in. But right now, no portfolio is really designed this way, and we need to do better. We also need to learn how to work across geography better in terms of climate solutions. For example, some places just matter more than others. Here's an example of how much CO2 is emitted from power plants across the world, zooming into North America. Turns out like 70% of the pollution comes from 30% of the power plants. So that's where you start. Or things like deforestation, where half of the deforestation on the planet comes from only 2 countries, Brazil and Indonesia. So let's focus on the kind of bigger levers in the system to get the biggest bang for our time and for our buck. We also need to think about how do we use these kind of roadmaps that use science to help guide our investments. Well, we can do a lot better because we're spending billions and billions of dollars of private money, philanthropy, and now tax dollars on climate solutions. And we have to do a better job of allocating our money, our time, and our effort across sectors, across time, and across geography. Because we cannot afford to waste one day or $1 on climate change. We have to do it just right and make sure we're not just following hype or somebody else's agenda, and instead follow the science. And at the end of the day, I think climate solutions present us with an enormous opportunity to build a better world. And I can assure you right here and right now, it is not yet game over on climate change, not one bit. It's game on. It's time for us as bold leaders to step up and go out and change the world and build the world we can be most proud of. And I suspect that in this audience, there are a lot of leaders who could step up and do amazing work. And I hope you, in particular, will be one of them and help us go build the better world. So thank you for your time today, and thank you so much for the work that you do. And I'm very, very excited to have the opportunity to speak with you today. Thanks so much.
So as a recap of this evening, we have had amazing community supporters participate. We've had youth poetry. We've had champions of promise that could put us all to shame with their activism. We've had wonderful Katie, who's our incoming board president, who decided that we were worth her time to MC for us this evening. Thank you to Katie. Jonathan Foley, oh my goodness, what an amazing presentation. Thank you so much. To all of our breakout speakers, you guys are fantastic. We lean so heavily on your expertise. Thank you so much for spending your time participating in this event tonight, for engaging in the chat, for presenting such lovely high-level experienced and lived experience content for our programming this evening. Thank you, thank you. I also am going to thank our supporters one more time at the supporter level, the City of Palo Alto, City of Hayward, Katie and Jean-Louis Escoffier, and Peter and Melanie Cross. Such a huge amount of gratitude sending your way. This event, of course, is recorded, so it will be made available to you online soon. Please keep an eye out for that. You'll be hearing in upcoming communications about where the recording will live. Thank you for sticking with us. This is our one time each year to really elevate our community the way that we desire to. We do a lot of programs throughout the year, and we get to say thanks a lot of the time throughout the year, but this is our one chance to bring everybody together in one location to celebrate under one Zoom roof, so to speak. And I'm glad to be participating with you. As most of you know, I am bringing a child into the world. And so in a little bit, I'm going to be on maternity leave. And this is such a wonderful way to say a short-term farewell to you. Thank you so much for spending your evening with me and my team, who oh gosh, we're so fortunate to have the group of people working at Actera that we do. So that's in essence supposed to be a quick recap. Not so quick, but I'm so grateful to all of you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next year.